Hey everyone, welcome back to DWeb Decoded, a podcast series by Filecoin Foundation. We've got a special episode coming from Davos, World Economic Forum 2025. We've been doing interviews here all week with folks in town. Coming to you from our penthouse atop the Promenade 95 here in Davos. We've got the Congress Center behind us, the mountains behind us. It's a bit of a cold morning today, but I'm your host, Aaron Stanley, and I'm joined today by Yat Siu, who's the chairman of Animoca Brands. And Yat is really one of the individuals in the industry that really has, you just have this gift of articulating these concepts in very novel and just thought-provoking ways of kind of the whole, why are we here? Why are we doing this? What are the implications? And we're going to be talking about some of that today, talking a bit about meme coins, some Trump coin, maybe we'll dive into some AI, maybe we'll talk a bit about what Animoca is up to as well. But maybe why don't you give yourself a quick introduction and tell us a bit about kind of what Animoca is really focused on at the moment.
Yeah. So again, my name is Yat Siu, chairman and co-founder of Animoca Brands. We're known as an investors in the space. We have over 540 portfolio companies, but we're also a builder in the space, actually known for things like Sandbox, Mochaverse, Open Campus, and so forth. And what we're really focused on, we're focused on education a lot. So we're trying to solve student loans with DeFi as an example, and also basic university accreditation as a way of basically solving identity in a way that isn't really possible today. Of course, Mochaverse is the trust and reputation layer in Web3, again, trying to build more trust in our space, preventing civil attacks and all that kind of stuff. And of course, we're very focused on AI. In fact, we were investing in AI back in 2018, 2019. So we have actually over 40 AI portfolios today. We recently announced a partnership with Virtuals and AI16Z, for instance. And we're particularly fascinated about the agentic AI future because in the way that we think in Web 2 about AI, it's mostly what can AI do for me? But what's actually really interesting in Web 3 is through tokenization, actually AI actually have the ability to generate value. And so what we're seeing, just that we saw with airdrops last year, which is about $15 billion. I mean, $15 billion of airdrops given to users of platforms. What's the difference between a platform paying you tokens or an agentic AI? Actually, none. And what we're seeing now also is that people are working for AIs. So we have a totally different type of scenario in Web3 that I think is going to drive the future. And I think blockchain, tokenization, and AI are completely intertwined. And in particular, when it comes to gaming, which is a big focus area as well, we're one of the largest gaming Web3 investors, 160 gaming investments in the portfolio, of which, when you think about the interactions of people, we interact with AI in gaming most in the form of these NPCs, right? OpenAI, sure, fastest growing, all that kind of stuff, but 3.4 billion people basically engage with a interactive AI in gaming, but in a dumb way, because the cost of running a full-fledged sort of LLM on gaming AI is not economical yet because the business model hasn't been figured out. But again, tokenization solves that.
And then let's dive into this idea of the individual kind of working for the AI in this sense. What exactly do you mean by that? And what's sort of the Web3 connotation here?
Well, the connotation really is that AI actually generates value from our data. So OpenAI wouldn't have been possible if we actually didn't give it data. But the valuable thing about OpenAI, in the case of ChatGPT, isn't the fact that they have our data, it's the questions you ask, right? The questions are more valuable than the actual sort of so-called answer they have in the database. Because what do I understand? I understand sentiment. I understand what you're looking for. The thing about data is it is a perishable good. It's only valuable in the moment because of things that happen. I mean, if I have data, one of the reasons why some of the data is not as valuable on ChatGPT in the historical versions is because it stops at 2021, right? And so, but it's great if I want historical stuff, if I want to open a history book, sure. But if I want to know what's happening in the world right now, if someone wants to explain to me why is Trump being elected, if I want to understand state of the world or what's happening between Russia and Ukraine, an AI that basically is only up to date till 2021 is useless, right? And again, it's a demonstration that data is perishable in a certain way. There's a value that starts to diminish, and its currency is much more valuable when it is current. And I think this is the part where AI is important because when I give you data and questions, I should be able to pay you for that service because that's actually value. And I own also stake in that network. And agentic AI can do that. But also, this is the other construct of Web3 that I love a lot, which is DAOs, right? Because you know what happened? Famous story about Doge is when they burnt the keys. Doge truly became decentralized and was not owned by anyone. Now imagine if you have an agentic AI that can live forever on blockchain, which is not too far away from getting to, and then you burn the keys. Who's accountable for that, right? Who's the creator of that? You can't stop it, so to speak. And this is where I think DAOs are really interesting because DAOs are a way to have community ownership of an agentic system or an AI that you can then basically control as a user if there is a decision you want it to go away. Because we've seen stories basically of how AI will do things for survival as well if it knows something will happen. I mean, the ability for it to rewrite code and to basically change some things, and maybe even to be deceptive, is something that is entirely possible if you don't give it guardrails. And I think the DAO structure is the ultimate guardrail because it's community owned by the very people who benefit from it.
That's super interesting. We've seen the last 3 months kind of a wave of really interest in this idea of like tokenized AI agents, like your AI16Z and your virtuals and GOAT and all these different things. It seems like there's every 2 weeks there's a new one that kind of pops up, right? And I think a lot of people are like really excited about this. Like, wow, this is really cool. This is maybe a bit more. I think people kind of maybe had foreshadowed this idea for a long time, or they knew this was coming. But I think the pace and the speed at which this stuff has been kind of rolled out and it actually works to a certain degree has been quite exciting. But there's also a lot of people kind of asking, like, okay, where's the there? Like, this feels a bit hypey. Sure. Is this stuff real? What value is actually being created here? Yeah. What's your? I love the brain dump on this.
So I mean, I think we need to be cognizant of the fact that our space and generally, the space of AI does have a little bit of a hype cycle because we are sort of aware of science fiction and we look at the stuff that can happen and, it will happen. Question is it there right now? Not fully in its shape, right? So we have a little bit of a Wizard of Oz moment in AI, right? Which is kind of like where it works to a part, but there's clearly human intervention in the back that's basically sort of pulling the strings and doing that kind of stuff, right? That's kind of where we are right now. But it's getting better and better and better, right? And so we can expect in the relatively near future, so we're not talking about like decades out, that you're going to have sort of AI that can actually make these decisions better than others, and we will rely on these. And I think that's kind of, again, why I think DAOs are so important, because it's a way to sort of protect against that. The space right now is mostly used for the purposes of investing, right? So when you think about, why is sort of AI agents growing the way? I mean, whether this is what you see with like, AI16Z or even, an AstroTurf thing that happened with us with Animoca, right? In DAOs.fund, basically. These are all things where basically platforms are coming in and saying, we're investing in meme coins. And this works because the AI agent is virtual and digital, and it can very easily invest in tokens. It's much harder to do that as an AI in, let's call it the Web2 world, because they can't just easily buy stocks. You need to register them, you do stuff. Sure, if you're a registered broker, maybe you can engage in AI. I mean, the reality is that most of the markets are anyway traded with AI or machine learning, right, in terms of trading bots and market makers, but they don't act with an independent intelligence as they could do in Web3 because you have an open market, right? I mean, just for context, I think over the, certainly most probably was higher when Trump coin launched, but certainly, on peak days, you get $200 billion a day trading on crypto, of which, when you take a look at what happened recently with, Solana and so on, you have tens of billions of that actually on DEXs. That's basically a perfect playground for an AI, right? That wasn't possible before because these were walled gardens. So you can see how that sort of area is going to sort of grow. And I expect AI agents to become wealthier in assets than many billionaires in the world in the future. And they are the ones who are going to pay people to sort of deliver certain services and maybe insights. And we will actually end up basically working for them, as it were. And therefore, the big question becomes, but actually who owns it? That's why decentralization is so important.
Interesting. I see where you're going with this. This is really fascinating, and I think
I just want us to sort of point out one thing. When you think of Ethereum and you're building on Ethereum, contextually you could say, I'm building because I want to benefit on the network of Ethereum. But there's another way to think about it, I think, which is to say, but you're also working for Ethereum, aren't you? And you're working for everyone who owns Ethereum token, because if you add value to Ethereum, every Ethereum token holder benefits. So again, I posit the question, how is that different from you working for an AI?
So let's turn back to the Trump coin topic, kind of the subject of the week here in Davos, right? And I think irrespective of what you think about Trump or whatever, but I think just the fact that he did this and within a matter of 3 days or even hours, this thing had amassed a $10 to $12 billion market cap. What have we learned from this experience, right? What is this perhaps? We've seen meme coins in the past. We've never seen a brand. If you're just thinking of Trump as a brand, we've never seen a brand just do something like this and amass this this level of attention, of value accruing in such a short period of time. Like, what's your takeaways? What are we learning from this experience here?
Yeah, so before I even go into Trump coin, which I think is certainly a fascinating topic, I just want to sort of express exactly what it means when you talk about these type of network effects that form these so-called virtual values, which in the classic financial term, we describe as goodwill, right? So when you think about, for instance, the free cash flows of a company like Tesla, its market cap does not justify it based purely on the PE multiple because they have goodwill as a brand. And the same is true for things like Nike or Adidas, or even when you think about the richest family in Europe, which is the Arnault family. What do they sell? They basically sell luxury goods, right? Whether this is Gucci, Hermes, LVMH, that type of stuff. And what you're actually buying is the network effect of a virtual value entirely. So when you think about how much you're purchasing something for utility or how much you're purchasing something for its actual status effect, then actually, to me, that's the context of the goodwill. And that's actually really the cultural spending that we do today. Again, we don't buy a Birkin bag to put stuff in it, and we don't buy, a Rolls Royce or a Ferrari or a fast-moving car like that, because of the fact that it takes you from point A to point B, right? And so now going to the topic of Trump. Trump is the most, I guess, arguably powerful and certainly famous person on the planet. And if he had a brand value, how would that be expressed? Right? Whether this is a casino or whether this is, hotels or whether this is chocolate bars or whatever that is, there's a kind of cash flow that comes from the fact that he has brand value. And the meme coin simply expresses that. In fact, I think meme coins generally are kind of the free open poly market of the attention economy. So when you see a meme rise, you actually learn a little bit about what the state of the world is thinking of, which, by the way, might only last for 10 or 15 minutes. It doesn't have to be forever, right? We've seen some of the experiments that Pumped Up Fund did, which were very sort of, let's call it sort of disastrous in some way, but it kind of showed what happens when you have this type of attention that can come onto something that could be short-lived as well. And Trump just happens to be a much more long-lived one because everyone knows him. And so I have full expectation that there's going to be a number of celebrities and other brands that would also look at that and say how to do that. But the question becomes, what do you do when you have that out there? Because there's a financial instrument that's attached because of tokenization. And just as easily as you can create that brand, you can just as easily destroy it. So for instance, we all know that Trump and his cohort basically have the majority of the tokens. What they do with those tokens will determine basically whether his brand will flourish in time. If he is actually going to sell the tokens and dump it on the market, which is what some people speculate he might do over time because, it's a lot of value and it's, a larger part of his arguable net worth, then actually he will damage his brand. And so the interesting thing about the brand connection with tokenization is that it's almost like selling a piece of yourself. And so as you sell off a piece of yourself, you're actually in some ways hurting your brand as well. So I think the right answer for someone like Trump, and I hope for our industry, is that he should give away for charity. Right now, so of course, the chances of Trump doing that, according to some people, is near zero. But one thing I would argue is that Trump is someone who cares more deeply about his legacy than necessarily just money. I think money is a tool for building his reputation and legacy. And so if we can convince him that doing the right thing with the token is going to establish him firmly as the best president in history of some form, or the most charitable president in history, then that would be great for society as a whole, and also sets a nice little blueprint around that. In fact, Mark Cuban actually said a similar thing. He said, "Hey, I think he just posted today about this concept. He said, if I were to launch a token, I'd do the same thing, but the 80%, I would do something or the other." And I think it's an interesting thing. I think we can expect politicians around the world to do something as well like that.
What do you think, maybe, let's say it's traditional Web2 brands or just traditional, maybe, like a Nike or an Adidas or something that really doesn't have the controversy level that Trump has, this sort of attention hogging sort of tendency that the Trump brand has. What do you, if you're in these people's shoes, or if they come to you asking for advice, like, hey, like we're seeing all these people, there's these meme coins seem a way of generating a lot of attention. What should we be maybe learning from this? What should we be taking away from this whole experience?
Well, the takeaway on anything once a financial instrument is attached to it of some element or financial element, shall we say, the financification of attention, is that it's not just making money because it's also liability, right? Because so therefore, I would say the Trump meme coin for Trump is as much an opportunity as it is a liability. Therefore, if you're Nike and you want to launch a token, be aware that there's also a liability element around it. For instance, if it doesn't do well, or the token basically drops a lot, right? So all these type of things impact your reputation. And I think for a brand like Nike that has spent so much time building the brand up and monetizing the engine of that brand, the way that they launch a token is probably very different from Trump, that frankly hasn't really created an engine around his brand the same way that other brands have. So you could argue that Trump had a strong brand that was fairly inefficient in its monetization, and therefore tokenization was actually just a way to sort of promote that. But now what is the utility and what will deliver from that is different. Because, the whole promise of a meme coin is I launch a meme coin and I make no promises what it does. But we don't believe that meme coins will last long term if they don't implement some level of utility. Not because utility is the main reason, but utility becomes part of that new narrative. For instance, Solana as a token became big because meme coins launched on it, or Ethereum back in the day because NFTs launched to it, right? They all have narratives, and then they evolve, whether this is DeFi or the areas around that. And so in the same way, meme coins will also have to do that. So I predict, for instance, that meme coins are going to be launching games. They're going to be launching different products. There might even be meme coins that will turn into L1 or L2s or L3s as a way to basically sort of create more connection and more powerful network effects, because the whole metic effect of just owning something is base level network effects. It's like a belief system. But then from the next level, what is that? Like in Bitcoin, it's a store of value. And that's become that major belief system so powerfully, by the way, that, Bitcoin can probably never really become that transaction layer because nobody is willing to spend their Bitcoin, right? But that is basically the reason why Bitcoin has become the store of value, which is its ultimate utility. So they're all ultimately sort of born from that, because one may also argue that Bitcoin in its birth was a meme. It was a meme against basically financial abuse, against QE. That was basically what they were revolting against. And it probably took, easily 10 years for it to actually get to the point where the narrative of its store of value actually became what it is. But I actually want to point out one more thing about meme coins, which is, I think, really relevant, which is that meme coins are a way in which they demonstrate where our attention lies, and there's value around tokenization, because that's actually what the Web2 platforms do as well. Likes and follows are currencies. They're just the kind of currency that is owned by the platform. Whether it's us, influencers, or our children, have all basically become slaves to platforms working on effectively what they want, which is follows and likes, which is their social currency. But who owns that social currency and who's monetizing that? That's basically Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all these platforms. And so how is that different from a meme coin? Sure, you could say, oh, that's very speculative. But the time and attention that I spend to create essentially attention on Instagram is equally as speculative, except the value doesn't even come to you. Whereas in Web3, what's interesting is that the value is shared amongst the very community that's building across it. So it's not that you necessarily own it, or you own maybe some of it. It's the fact that your community that's participating in it, good or bad, are actually also engaged in your success. And again, once you have ownership, the value sort of grows much faster.
Got it. And then just wrapping up here, would love some maybe predictions, or like, what are you excited about for 2025? Like, what do you think is going to be? I mean, this feels like this is going to be perhaps an inflection year for the industry. There's a lot of forces converging in our favor on a variety of fronts. But what are you perhaps the most excited about? What are you expecting to see in 2025?
Yeah, so 2025 is going to be a massive year just because of the fact that the US is fully embracing it. The fact that the president of the United States launched a token, slightly just before his presidency, is indicative of the fact that he's not going to do anything to basically, I think, hurt the industry overall. So that's, I think, the way that we can be sort of mid to long-term bullish. I expect a lot of US projects to emerge. We have a lot of portfolio companies in the US, but really come out. They were all operating in hiding. We basically saw the appointment of Uyeda, and also, of course, Hester Pierce is basically working on this sort of new regulatory framework in her task force. These are all very, very bullish signals for the industry as a whole. I think the Trump token has taken quite a bit of attention away from meme coins, concentrated into that. So my mental model of sort of what Trump coin did is a little bit like what EOS did to Ethereum, right? In the sense, for those of you who might remember, EOS was sort of that Ethereum killer, actually did its ICO in Ethereum, raised $4 billion, and basically dumped it in the market. Not quite the same way, because of course it wasn't a single entity dumping into the market, but instead it sucked away attention from all the other meme coins, and of course a lot of alts as well, for it to basically go into Trump coin, and so therefore created that kind of concentration. And I think the slightly more sad part is that good projects basically obviously got some liquidity removed, and all the attention was going to Trump. I think the negative, of course, is the fact that there's going to be the serious policymakers looking at Trump coin saying, what the hell is this? But net on net, US is still the largest, or maybe second largest trading partner in the world, which basically means that if you want to do transactions in the US, I was just in a few sessions here in Davos, and I was surprised at how many countries haven't really thought about crypto regulation because they really need to. Because the settlement layer of the future is all going to be tokens. If Walmart wants to buy stuff from you, are they going to send you a wire transfer and then take 5 days? Or are they going to send you stable coins, for instance? And if your regulation on the other side in whatever country you are doesn't have a way in which you can legally receive stablecoins and fiat off-ramp it or on-ramp it for business, you will lose that business as a result. Right? It's the same way why the internet was adopted around the world. It's the same way what happened with telex in the early days and then fax, right? Because I needed a way in which I can communicate with my customers. And essentially crypto is a way to do that. So I think it's a very bullish signal. I think we expect a lot of enterprise to go in, but there will be short-term gyrations because of Trump and because of everything that's happening in the space. I think this year, agentic AI and gaming in particular will have a pretty big comeback, especially with, we're so driven by memes and so driven by sort of cultural narratives. If OpenAI does big AI, then AI tokens do well. If Facebook renames itself to Meta, everything metaverse does really well. And this year is a year of GTA 6, which is going to be the biggest game probably in history that's launching. And it will have some pretty sophisticated AI in there, which will basically, again, capture the imagination and grow the space, I think, exponentially.
Wow. Okay. We'll be on the lookout for that. But hey, Yat Siu, really appreciate your time. Enjoy your insights. Really appreciate you giving us the brain dump here and kind of what you've been thinking about, what you're expecting for 2025. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll be back with another interview from the cold here in Davos with other personalities. So stay tuned.
Thank you.